Hello 7th grade students, and welcome to Mr. B's science class. Hello students, today we're going to be talking about air pollution. Bad stuff. Three major topics we're going to be covering are fossil fuels, smog associated with automobile exhaust, and CFCs, chlorofluorocarbons. And I'm going to tell you right now, if you're not excited about this stuff, you may be dead.
Ha 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 ha.
What a bonehead. All right, let's get into this. All right, let's get started on air pollution. Okay, air pollution is the contamination of our atmosphere with these pollutants. Atmosphere, going around our Earth, these pollutants get up into that atmosphere. Now, these pollutants are really bad for plants, animals, and humans. With humans, they definitely are associated with respiratory problems. You know, our lungs. So, you know, pretend those are lungs. So when we breathe this stuff in, these bad pollutants stay in our lungs and make us sick. And potentially can result in some, potentially cancer or something even, I would say worse, but cancer is pretty dang bad. Can't really get much worse than that. So, we know that air pollution is a global problem. This is a global problem associated with climate change and the destruction of our atmosphere, mainly our ozone layer. And we also know when these pollutants get up into the hydrosphere, the area where the clouds are, and it mixes with the water vapor, so pollutants mixing with this water vapor, and then when it rains down, precipitates, results in acid rain. This pollutants is acidifying, is making these like acid clouds, not crazy acid, but enough that it's affecting the pH that when it rains down, we have acid rain, which is obviously bad for plants and animals, especially for plants. It will destroy forests. Okay, next, we're going to talk about fossil fuels. So, fossil fuels, traditionally associated with oil, coal, and natural gas. So, these three things, when they're burned, will produce CO2, carbon dioxide. Carbon dioxide is what we call a greenhouse gas. So, when in balance, when in balance in cycle, the CO2 is not a bad thing. Plants will breathe it in for photosynthesis. But when we have excess CO2 in our atmosphere, it becomes a pollutant. So these greenhouse gases in our atmosphere help to trap the heat in from the sun, so to make our planet, habitable for us to live on it. But if we have too much of this in, it really traps it in and it starts to rise up in temperature, our planet, which is climate change, global warming. Burning of fossil fuels also results in sulfur, nitrogen gases. These gases, when they mix with the clouds, These gases, when they mix with the clouds, will acidify these clouds, which we've already talked about, and make acid rain. And we've already discussed why acid rain's bad, especially bad for plants. Okay, part 2, we're going to be talking about smog. Smog is associated with automobile exhaust. You got your car. Pretend this is a good car. We're going to say this is our monster truck here. Some of them have tailpipes there. Cranking out our exhaust. Maybe they have a big one right there, cranking out a lot of exhaust. So this exhaust is a pollutant. And this exhaust, when it gets trapped by weather and it mixes up in that weather, that cloud, that fog layer, and then sunlight interacts with it. So, this is our cloud with exhaust in it, and sunlight starts interacting with it, turns it into smog. Many of you have seen examples of smog, especially if you've had a chance to go down to, Los Angeles area. You're coming up over the hill and you come down into that valley, or over in the Bay Area also. That brown haze over top of the city, or even sometimes the city is immersed in it, that's smog. So smog can stay there for up to a few hours or even days, depending on the situation. In your Google Classroom, I put an article in there about smog that affected London back in the 1950s. And within a 5-day period, some estimates are up to 12,000 people died from this really bad smog they had in there. So that's why most smogs are traditionally associated with urban areas, especially if they're surrounded by hills. Because it's really hard to move that weather pattern out, and it just sits over top of the city. So exhaust, mixed with the fog or clouds, turns into smog. So exhaust, that's the burning of that fossil fuel, right? Which is oil made into gasoline. Gasoline gets burned off in your car. So that's resulting in carbon monoxide, some sulfur, nitrogen gases, and bad organic compounds. All that together makes exhaust. Okay, students, we're going to talk about our third topic, CFCs. Chlorofluorocarbons. So, these chlorofluorocarbons traditionally were used as propellants in aerosol cans. And in many cases, old school fire extinguishers. And they were also used with old refrigerators and old time air conditioners. With the refrigerators and air conditioners, it was used as a coolant. So we know these CFCs, chlorofluorocarbons, are bad when they get up into our atmosphere because they destroy what is called the ozone layer. The ozone layer protects you from, I almost said UV rays coming from the sun. So why are these UV rays bad? Well, these UV rays are associated with the development of skin cancer. So if we have too much of this UV rays not being blocked by our ozone layer. Okay, students, make sure you do your Kahoot quiz. It's going to be about air pollution, fossil fuels, exhaust, smog, and CFCs. Make sure you're prepared. for when you come to class, our learning objective, where we're going to be talking about, these 3 items and air pollution. That will be our learning objective for class. Okay, have a good evening. See you guys in class tomorrow.
You don't want to know how I die.
Probably air pollution.